Rusttown was not a place people chose to live. It was where they ended up when the universe forgot about them. Old metal shacks stood under a red sky, and the air smelled of smoke and oil. Broken machines lay everywhere, like bones of a world that once cared. Eli Ward, a human mechanic, lived alone in a corner of that dying colony. His workshop was full of noise, grinding gears, sparking tools, and the hum of old generators trying to stay alive. Every morning he worked with tired eyes, fixing machines no one else bothered to touch. He had once dreamed of building ships for the great human fleets, but now he only repaired scraps for miners and drifters who paid in coins or favors. One rainy evening, thunder rolled over the tin roofs. Eli was closing the workshop when a shadow appeared at the gate. It was a trader. His coat soaked, his hover cart filled with metal cages. Inside one of them sat a young alien girl, thin, quiet, her skin pale blue and glowing faintly under the dim lights. She looked fragile, but her silver eyes seemed older than time. The trader grinned. "Cheap help. Mechanic," he said, tapping the cage. "She can cook, clean, and won't talk back, trained to serve. Just 50 credits. Eli frowned. He hated the way the man spoke, like she was a broken tool, not a living being. But the workshop had grown too big for one person. He had no time to cook or clean, and food was running low. He sighed, rubbing the grease from his hands. "She won't cause trouble?" he asked. "No trouble," the trader promised. "She's quiet, obedient, doesn't even look you in the eye." Eli looked at her again. She was staring down, shivering slightly, her hands clasped tightly. He could see faint marks around her wrists. Metal circles burned into her skin, something inside him twisted, a strange mix of guilt and pity. "All right," he muttered, handing over the credits. The trader smiled, unlocked the cage, and left without another word. The girl stood there silently in the rain, waiting for instructions. Eli took off his coat and placed it over her shoulders. "You can come inside," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you," she nodded, but said nothing. Her movements slow, careful, like she expected punishment for every step. Inside the workshop, she looked around with wide eyes at the hanging tools, the half-built engines and the small stove glowing in the corner. Eli pointed. "You can stay in that room. It's not much, but it's warm. You'll help with cooking and cleaning. That's all." She bowed slightly, whispering, "Yes, Master." The word hit him like a hammer. "Don't call me that," he said quickly. "My name's Eli, just—" "Eli," she hesitated, unsure, then nodded again. "Yes, Eli," she said softly. The way she said his name sounded like it was something precious, something she hadn't said in a long time. That night, as rain hammered on the roof, Eli sat at his desk fixing a broken power cell. The girl, Leora, that's what the trader had called her, moved quietly in the kitchen. He could hear small sounds, clinking pots, boiling water, and then humming. It was a soft sound, almost too quiet to notice, but it made the lights flicker gently. The broken lamp on his table blinked twice and stayed on. Eli froze, staring at it. The power cell in his hand suddenly buzzed with new energy. He looked toward the kitchen. The girl was still humming. Unaware of what she had done, her voice was calm, like a gentle current passing through the air. Later, when they ate, Eli noticed she only took a small bite of food, like she was afraid to eat too much. "You can eat more," he said. "There's enough." She shook her head. "Slaves eat after masters," she murmured. Eli sighed. "You're not a slave here," he said, his tone firm but kind. "You work, you rest. You eat, same as me, understand?" For a moment she just stared at him, confusion in her silver eyes, then she whispered, "No master ever said that before." That night, Eli couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about her voice, about the light that returned to his dying machines. He had seen strange tech in his life, AI ghosts, alien crystals, quantum cores, but this felt different. This felt alive. Outside, Rusttown slept under the cold rain, but inside that small workshop something had changed. An old mechanic who had lost his purpose, and a quiet alien girl who had lost her freedom. Two broken lives now under the same roof. Eli didn't know it yet, but the girl he had hired only to cook would soon become the heartbeat of his world. She wasn't sent to serve him. She was sent to save him, and the machines around them seemed to already know it. As their silent hums grew stronger, echoing like a promise of something greater waiting to be born. Morning came slowly in Rusttown, sunlight struggling to cut through the brown haze hanging over the scrapyards. Eli was already at work, hammering at a cracked ship engine, While the girl, Leora, moved quietly behind him. She had washed the floor, cleaned the dusty shelves, and now stood near the stove, her small frame wrapped in an old gray cloak he had given her. She said nothing, but her silence was not empty. It felt peaceful, steady, almost protective. Eli tried to pretend he wasn't watching her, but he noticed everything. How careful she was with every movement, how she always glanced at him before touching anything, as if seeking permission for every breath. When he asked her to hand him a wrench, she froze for a second, unsure which one he meant, then rushed to bring all of them, her hands trembling slightly. "You don't have to be afraid," he said softly, taking the tool. "I'm not like the people you knew before." She nodded but didn't speak, her silver eyes lowering again. There was so much fear buried in her that even kindness confused her. Hours passed, the engine groaned, sparks flew, and the workshop filled with the smell of hot metal. Eli wiped sweat from his forehead, muttering about the rusted coils. "This thing's older than I am," he joked under his breath. But when he turned around, he saw her watching the engine with quiet curiosity. Without a word, Leora stepped closer, her fingers hovering above the metal. A faint blue light shimmered from her skin. The dead coils inside the engine began to hum. Eli's jaw dropped. He hadn't connected the wires yet. He hadn't even powered the circuit. But somehow it was alive. "Wait, how did you do that?" he asked, stepping closer. She pulled her hand back quickly, shaking her head. "I didn't do anything, Eli. Please don't be angry," she said. Her voice small. "I'm not angry," he replied, still staring at the engine. "I'm amazed." She looked terrified, her body tense. "Where I come from," she whispered. "They hurt us if we touch things that move. We were made to obey, not to fix if we fixed something. They said it meant we were thinking too much." Eli went silent, his chest tightening. He had heard rumors about the alien colonies where genetically built slaves were created. Part machine, part life, bred to serve empires until they burned out. He had thought those stories were long gone, but now one of them was standing in his workshop. Afraid to use her gift, he crouched beside her and said gently, "Leora, in this place, fixing things isn't a crime. It's what keeps us alive." She blinked, confused. "You want me to fix things?" "I want you to be yourself," he said simply. Whatever that means, for the first time. She smiled, small, uncertain, but real. From that day on, something changed. The workshop no longer felt like a tomb of broken metal. Leora began to hum quietly while she worked, and machines around her seemed to respond. Old power tools started running smoother, lights stayed on longer, and even the old cleaning bot, which hadn't worked in years, rolled across the floor again, chirping softly. At first, Eli thought it was a coincidence, but every time she sang, the air around her seemed to glow faintly, like energy followed her emotions. He asked her once, "Does it hurt when you do that?" And she shook her head. "No, it feels like breathing." He laughed. "Then breathe as much as you like." But her past didn't let go easily. Sometimes in the middle of the night, Eli would wake up to the sound of her whispering in her sleep, crying softly, saying words he didn't understand. Once, when he approached her, she sat up quickly, terrified. "I'm sorry, please." "I'll work harder," she begged. Her hands shaking, Eli froze, then said softly, "You don't need to say sorry, no one's angry. You're safe here." Those words seemed to mean more to her than anything else. She hugged her knees and whispered, "Safe." I never knew that word could feel warm. Days turned into weeks. They worked side by side. She learned the names of every tool, and sometimes when Eli was too tired, she would quietly finish the repairs for him, faster and cleaner than any human could. He started leaving small things for her to fix, pretending he'd forgotten them, just to see her smile proudly when she got it right. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Eli found her sitting near the junk pile, holding a broken piece of glass, light from the sky reflecting in her eyes. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She looked up. "About what it means to belong," she said quietly. "I've always worked in places that weren't home, but this place listens when I sing, and you listen when I speak. Maybe that's what home is." Eli didn't know what to say, so he just nodded, feeling something heavy and soft settle inside his chest. He didn't realize it yet, but he had started caring, not out of pity, but because she made the air in his life breathe again. That night, as he locked up the shop, he saw her sitting by the window, the machines around her glowing faintly in rhythm with her heartbeat. And for the first time in years, Rusttown didn't feel dead anymore. It felt alive, Eli whispered to himself. "She's more than I thought." And somewhere deep inside, he knew the story. Between them was only beginning. Rusttown slept under a sky of rust and smoke, but inside Eli's workshop, lights still flickered, machines hummed softly, and two souls worked side by side. Eli repaired a cracked plasma coil while Leora carefully wiped oil from the metal table, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The air was warm, almost peaceful, yet something in her movements felt distant, like her heart was somewhere else. Eli noticed. He always did. "You've been quiet today," he said. His voice gentle but curious. Leora hesitated, then whispered, "I had a dream." He looked up, wiping grease from his hands. "What kind of dream?" Her gaze fell to the floor. "Of a place filled with light, machines floating like stars, and voices calling my name. Not as a command, but as a song," she said softly. "But when I woke up, I couldn't remember their faces." Eli studied her, wondering how someone like her could dream of such things. Dreams belonged to free people, not those who had been chained and sold. "Maybe it was your home," he said, "before they took you." She shook her head. "We were not given homes, only tasks," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "We built ships, cleaned reactors, repaired engines, and when one of us broke, they made another." Eli's jaw tightened. He had heard stories of engineered species used as living tools, creatures built to obey commands, half organic, half synthetic, designed by alien empires that had long since fallen. He felt a wave of anger, not at her, but at the world that made her this way. Later that night, when Leora went to rest, Eli searched the old storage room, digging through piles of rusted parts. He remembered seeing something, an old data slate from the war era, cracked but maybe still working. He plugged it into the wall and watched as faint blue light flickered across the screen. Ancient files loaded slowly. Names of species, experiment codes, locations. And then he found it. Project Leora 7, the file opened, showing images of beings like her, glowing eyes, delicate hands, metallic veins running under pale skin. The description read, "Bioengineered neural conduits designed to interact directly with technology. Limited emotional development, fully obedient." Eli leaned back, his stomach twisting. They had built her to be a living machine, not a person, and yet she smiled, she dreamed. She laughed sometimes when he burned his fingers or dropped tools. She was far more human than the monsters who made her. The next morning, Leora noticed his tired eyes. "You didn't sleep," she said softly, handing him a cup of warm broth. Eli looked at her for a long time before speaking. "Leora, do you know what you are?" Her hand froze mid-air, her breathing stopped. Why do you ask?" she whispered, fear flickering in her voice. He sighed. "Because I think you deserve to know the truth." She shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. "Please don't, Eli." "I already know," she said. "I was born in a lab, not from a mother. I was made to serve and die young. My mind was tied to machines, that's why they fear me. They say I make things feel." He stared at her. "Speechless when I escaped," she continued, voice trembling. "I ran to the farthest colony I could find. But they found me again. They sold me like metal. No one wanted to listen. No one cared what I was, only what I could do." She looked down. "Until you." Eli felt something break inside him, a mix of sorrow and fury. "No one owns you here," he said quietly. "You're free, do you understand? I don't care what they built you for, you're alive. And that means something." Her tears spilled silently, glowing faintly in the dim light. "Alive," she repeated, like she was testing the sound of it. "I never thought that word could belong to me." The next few days, something changed between them. Leora started speaking more, asking questions about human food, about music, about why people laughed. Eli showed her how to cook noodles, how to fix a wrist motor, how to whistle. She would tilt her head and try, sometimes failing, sometimes giggling softly, and every time she smiled, the workshop lights flickered brighter. One evening, a customer entered the shop, a man with metal implants and a cruel grin. He dropped a broken scanner on the counter and glanced at Leora. "Didn't know you kept one of those around," he sneered. "Careful, human. They're dangerous when they start thinking too much." Eli's voice went cold. "Get out," he said flatly. The man laughed. "Touchy, huh? Maybe I'll come back for her later. People pay good money for working models." Before Eli could move, the lights dimmed. A faint vibration filled the air. The man's metal implants began to spark. He screamed, clutching his arm. What did you—" But before he could finish, The lights flickered back on and Leora was standing still, eyes glowing softly, hands trembling. "I didn't mean to," she whispered, terrified. "He wanted to hurt you. I just wanted him to stop." Eli rushed to her side, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, he's gone." "You're safe," he said. But inside he knew this was bigger than either of them. She wasn't just connected to machines, she could control them. She was something the world would never let live in peace. As night fell over Rusttown, Eli looked at her sitting quietly by the fire, her silver eyes reflecting the flames, and he realized one truth. Leora wasn't his helper anymore. She was a secret the galaxy would kill to possess. And from this moment on, keeping her safe meant risking everything, and he would, no matter what it cost. The night in Rusttown was never quiet. It always hummed with the sound of distant engines, broken machines, and wind scraping against metal roofs. But that night something felt different. The air was heavy, the shadows longer, and even the stars seemed to hide behind clouds of rust-colored dust. Eli couldn't sleep. He kept checking the locks, the doors, the windows, his hands shaking slightly. He knew trouble was coming. Leora sat near the corner, softly tracing patterns on a broken data chip, her silver eyes calm but alert. She could feel his unease. "You're worried," she said quietly. Eli didn't look at her. "The man who came earlier. The one with the implants," he muttered. "He wasn't just a customer, he was a scout." "Someone sent him?" She tilted her head. "For me," she said, not as a question but a fact. He sighed, rubbing his face. "Yeah, they probably told the traitor where to find us, and he's greedy enough to come back." Leora was silent for a long moment, then she asked, "If they come for me, will you give me back?" The question hit harder than a punch. Eli turned toward her. "What kind of man do you think I am?" He said, his voice low. "You're not a thing I can give." "Leora." She stared at him, something trembling behind her calm face. "Then they'll hurt you," she whispered. "And I don't want that." He smiled faintly, tired but warm. "I've been hurt before, but losing you would break something I can't fix." Before she could answer, a sharp noise echoed outside, the growl of hover engines, lights flashing through the cracks of the door. Eli's heart dropped. "They're here," he said, grabbing his wrench like a weapon. The traitor's voice rang out, oily and confident. "Ward, you've got something that belongs to me." Eli shouted back, "She doesn't belong to anyone." The traitor laughed. "You think you can hide a fortune in your junkyard? That thing in there is worth more than every scrap in this colony." Leora stepped beside Eli, her hands glowing faintly blue. "I can make them leave," she whispered. "But you might see things you can't forget." Eli glanced at her, his eyes steady. "Do what you have to." The door burst open. Armed patrolmen stormed in, weapons drawn, the traitor behind them smirking. "Don't resist, mechanic, and maybe I'll let you live." Before he could take another step, the air changed. A low hum filled the workshop. The machines, every broken engine, every loose gear, every metal shard, started to shake, glowing with faint light. Leora stepped forward, her eyes bright as stars, her voice calm but powerful. "You won't take him," she said. The soldiers raised their guns, but their weapons jammed instantly, circuits melting under invisible pressure. Sparks rained down as their armor systems overloaded. The traitor screamed, covering his face. "Stop her! She's burning the systems." Eli watched in shock but also awe. Machines responded to her like living creatures, protecting her, protecting him. The old repair bots floated up, their rusted arms twisting into shields. The generators pulsed brighter, flooding the shop with light. The traitor tried to run, but the door slammed shut behind him, metal bending as if the workshop itself was alive. Leora's voice softened. "Leave and never return," she said. The words echoing in the traitor's mind, not just in the air. He stumbled back, terrified, and fled into the storm outside. The patrolman followed, half blinded by static interference. When the last sound faded, silence filled the shop. Every machine powered down, smoke rising gently from the floor. Leora stood in the middle, trembling, her light fading. Eli ran to her, catching her before she fell. Hey, stay with me," he said. His voice breaking, her eyes flickered open. "Did I hurt anyone?" He shook his head. "No, you scared them away. That's all." Tears formed in her eyes, glowing softly. "I didn't want to become what they made me," she whispered. "A weapon." Eli held her close. "You're not a weapon," he said. "You're the only reason this place still has life in it." Outside, Rusttown was still, the sky cracked with lightning, and the smell of burning circuits filled the air. Eli looked at the workshop, bent, scarred, but still standing. "They'll come back," he said quietly. "Next time." "It'll be worse," Leora nodded weakly. "Then we run." He looked at her surprised. "Run where?" She smiled faintly. "There are places beyond the mining colonies, forgotten worlds where no one remembers the wars. Maybe there we can start again." Eli thought for a long moment, then nodded. "All right," he said. "But wherever we go together." Her hand reached for his, small and trembling. "Together," she whispered. That night under the roaring storm, Eli packed what little he could: tools, maps, spare fuel cells, and a small piece of metal with her name engraved on it. Leora helped silently, her light flickering weakly but her smile steady. When dawn came, the two of them walked out into the wasteland hand in hand, leaving behind the rusted town that had given them both pain and purpose. They didn't know what waited ahead: freedom, danger, or maybe both. But for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt alone, and somewhere deep inside the broken workshop they left behind, the machine still hummed softly, as if whispering farewell to the girl who had given them life, and to the man who had chosen her over everything he owned. The desert beyond Rusttown stretched endless and empty, a wasteland of red sand, broken towers, and bones of forgotten ships buried under dust. The twin suns burned above, turning the metal ruins into mirrors of fire. Eli and Leora moved fast, their small rover rumbling through cracked roads, wind howling around them. It had been 3 days since they fled the town, 3 days since the patrols had come, and 3 days since Leora had used her power to save him. Eli could still see the fear in her eyes every time she looked at her hands. They trembled whenever she remembered what she had done. "You don't have to blame yourself," he said, keeping his eyes on the horizon. "You saved both of us." She hugged her knees, sitting in the passenger seat. "But I scared you," she whispered. He shook his head. "No. You reminded me how strong you are." The rover bounced over rough ground, dust rising like smoke. Behind them, in the far distance, dark shapes followed, hoverbikes and drones. The traitors weren't done yet. Leora turned, her eyes narrowing. "They found us again." Eli cursed under his breath, pushing the throttle. "We can't outrun them forever," he muttered. "We need cover." They reached a canyon carved deep into the red earth, ancient wrecks piled inside, rusted ships, old mining rigs, broken engines, a graveyard of machines. Eli stopped the rover and jumped out, grabbing his tools. "Help me," he said. "We'll use the junk to hide the rover." Leora nodded, but her hands glowed faintly as she touched the old metal. The broken engines stirred. Panels moved on their own. The wreck shifted slowly until the rover was hidden beneath a wall of rusted steel. Eli stared, amazed. "You just saved us hours of work," he said, smiling. She gave a small smile back, but her eyes were distant. "They won't stop," she said. "They'll burn everything to take me back." Eli crouched beside her. "Then we'll burn first," he said quietly. Hours later, the sound of hover engines echoed through the canyon. The air vibrated with the whine of machines. The traitor's voice came over the loudspeaker. "Ward, you can't hide forever. Give me the girl, and maybe I'll let you crawl away with your life." Eli looked at Leora, her eyes glowing softly in the shadows. "He'll never stop," he said, "and I'm not letting him take you." She reached for his hand. "You can still run," she whispered. "I'll hold them here." He shook his head firmly. "Not a chance." The first drone appeared over the ridge. Red light scanning the canyon, Eli grabbed his blaster, taking aim. "I'll keep them busy," he said, but before he could fire, the drone exploded midair, its metal folding like paper. Leora stood still, her palms raised, eyes burning bright white. The wrecks around them began to move, ancient engines sparking to life, gears grinding after years of silence. The graveyard awakened. Ships that hadn't flown in centuries rose slowly, their broken wings glowing. The air filled with the roar of power returning to metal. The patrol descended in force, 5 hoverbikes, 3 armored trucks, and the traitor at the front shouting orders. "Take her alive! Kill the human if you must!" Leora stepped forward, her voice calm. "You'll hurt no one," she said. her tone echoing across the canyon. The air itself seemed to bend around her, the sand rising in waves. Eli watched, shielding his face from the heat. He had seen machines move before, but never like this. It wasn't destruction. It was music. The engines obeyed her like loyal guardians, forming walls of steel and light, protecting them. The traitor screamed, firing his weapon, but the bullets melted before reaching her. The energy pulsing around her body flared like fire. Her hair floated as if weightless. Eyes glowing brighter than the sun's. "Leora, stop!" Eli shouted, his voice breaking. "You'll burn yourself out." She turned to him, tears glowing on her cheeks. "They'll never stop unless I make them remember what they made me for." The ground shook. Lightning cracked across the red sky. The machines answered her pain, her fear, her anger. From the canyon walls, beams of pure energy fired outward, striking the patrol vehicles. They exploded one by one in flashes of blue fire. Drones fell from the air like dying birds. When the dust settled, silence fell again. The traitor's bike lay smoking, half buried in sand, his body gone, only ashes left. Leora stood trembling, her glow fading fast. Eli ran to her and caught her as she fell. "Leora!" he shouted, holding her close. "Breathe, please!" Her eyes flickered open weakly. "Did I save you?" she whispered. He nodded quickly, his throat tight. "You saved us both." She smiled faintly. "Then it was worth it," she whispered before losing consciousness. Eli looked around at the wreckage, the melted steel, the smoking ground, the air still humming with power. He realized she wasn't a weapon anymore. She was life, a being that carried both destruction and mercy in her heart. He lifted her gently into the rover, whispering, "Hold on, Leora, I'll get you somewhere safe." As the rover rolled away from the canyon of fire and steel, the machines she had awakened slowly fell silent again. But some of them stayed faintly alive, humming softly, like they were keeping watch, waiting for her return. And far above, in the distant stars, satellites and listening ships caught the energy spike, sending signals across the void. Unknown voices whispering, "The starborn have awakened again." Eli didn't hear it, but the universe had just taken notice of the girl he once bought only to cook, and now everyone would come looking. The desert winds howled softly outside the small shelter they had found, a forgotten outpost buried half under the red sand. Eli worked through the night, his hands trembling as he fixed an old power cell and placed it beside Leora, who lay motionless on the bed, her skin pale, her faint glow fading with each passing hour. He checked her pulse again, weak, but still there, the same rhythm that had kept him alive through chaos. "Come on, Leora," he whispered. "You can't stop now." For the first time in a long time, the mechanic who fixed broken things couldn't fix the one that mattered most. He sat by her side, staring at the faint light under her skin, remembering every smile, every small laugh, every time she called him Eli with that soft, careful voice. Outside, the night stretched endlessly, the stars watching silently. When morning came, she stirred faintly, her eyes flickering open, silver and weak. "Eli?" she whispered. He leaned forward, relief flooding his face. "Hey, easy, I'm here." Her voice was barely a breath. "Did I destroy everything?" He shook his head quickly. "You saved us. You stopped them, that's all that matters." Her lips trembled. "I felt everything," she said softly. "Fear, anger, and something warm when you called my name. It scared me more than the fire." Eli smiled gently. "That's not fear, Leora. That's what it feels like to care." She blinked slowly, trying to understand. "Care," she repeated. "Is that love?" Eli's throat tightened. He hesitated, then nodded. "Maybe," he said softly. "It's the part of us that refuses to let go." Days passed. She slowly recovered, sitting up, helping him rebuild small machines around the outpost, her glow returning little by little. But something inside her had changed. She no longer moved like a servant or spoke like someone waiting for orders. Her voice carried warmth now, and her laughter filled the cold halls like sunlight through dust. One evening, as Eli fixed the broken water purifier, he noticed her staring out the window, the dying sun painting her face in shades of gold and red. "You're thinking again," he said with a small smile. She turned to him, smiling faintly. "I'm learning what it means to exist," she said. "Before I followed commands, but now I want things, small things," he chuckled. "Like what?" She thought for a moment. "To feel rain again, to taste food without fear, to touch someone's hand without flinching," she said, looking down. "To live without being owned." Eli set down his wrench and sat beside her. "You already are," he said softly. "Free, alive, your own person." She shook her head. "But my body is still full of wires, circuits, energy. They built me to serve," she said quietly. "I don't know if I can ever be like you." He smiled sadly. "You're already more human than most I've met." Her eyes shimmered and she whispered, "Then what are you?" He laughed softly. "Just a man who fixes broken things." She reached out and took his hand, her fingers cold but gentle. "Then thank you," she said, "for fixing me." That night, rain came, rare and quiet, tapping gently on the metal roof. Leora stepped outside, looking up at the gray sky, each drop glowing faintly when it touched her skin. Eli followed, watching her twirl slowly, laughing softly, like a child seeing the world for the first time. The storm grew stronger, lightning flashing above, and for a moment, Eli saw the reflection of her glow merging with the storm's light. It was as if she belonged to both worlds, human and machine, nature and code. When the rain calmed, they sat together under the awning. Water dripping from her hair, she looked at him and said quietly, "Eli, why did you stay with me? You could have left when I was hunted, when I burned everything." He looked at her, his voice steady. "Because when I met you, I was already broken," he said. "Fixing machines was easy, but you reminded me why I ever wanted to fix things at all. You reminded me of heart." Her lips parted. Her glow pulsed brighter. "And what if my heart isn't real?" she whispered. "What if it's just circuits pretending to feel?" Eli smiled, reaching out to touch her cheek. "Then let it pretend forever," he said, "because whatever it is, it's beautiful." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch, and for the first time, she didn't feel like a creation. She felt alive, whole, seen far in the distance. A faint echo rolled through the clouds, the sound of ships, searching, scanning for the energy signal she had released days ago. Danger was returning, but for this single night they didn't care. Inside that forgotten outpost, surrounded by silence and the smell of rain, a mechanic and a girl made of light sat together, both once broken, both finally finding something worth keeping. Eli whispered, "We'll face whatever comes next." "Together," Leora smiled faintly, her eyes glowing warm and alive. "Together," she repeated, her voice like music through the storm. The morning after the storm was quiet, too quiet. The desert stretched endlessly, washed clean by the rain, the sky pale and cold. Eli stepped outside the outpost. His boots sinking into the wet sand, he looked at the horizon. Empty, peaceful, but his gut told him peace never lasted long in their world. Inside, Leora sat near the small heater, repairing a damaged drone she had found in the canyon days ago. Her fingers moved delicately, her touch soft but powerful. Every wire she fixed glowed faintly under her skin. "It's almost done," she said when she noticed him watching. Her voice calm but distant. Eli smiled faintly. "You're still fixing things even after everything." She looked up, her silver eyes warm. "You taught me that fixing is another way of saying you haven't given up," she said softly. He sat beside her, handing her a cup of warm liquid. "I didn't teach you that, you already knew." For a moment, everything felt normal. Two souls in a broken world finding a reason to stay. But then the silence broke. A deep, low hum vibrated through the air. Metal scraps outside trembled. The power lights flickered. Eli froze. "That's not the wind," he said quietly. Leora stood, her eyes wide, glowing brighter. "They've found us." Outside, the sky darkened as ships appeared, sleek black patrol vessels, symbols of the core empire glowing on their hulls. These weren't traders or scavengers. These were hunters, and they were not here to bargain. Eli grabbed his tools, his blaster, anything he could use. "We'll run," he said quickly, like last time. "We'll find another place," but Leora didn't move. She was staring at the ships, her expression unreadable. "They're not here to capture," she whispered. "They're here to erase." The first blast hit the ground outside, shaking the shelter, sand and fire exploding into the air. Eli grabbed her arm. "We can fight together." She looked at him, her eyes full of light and sorrow. "No, Eli. If I fight again, I'll burn everything. Even you." He held her face between his hands, voice breaking. "Then don't. Just stay, please, we'll hide, I'll fix something." "I always do," she smiled faintly, tears glimmering like liquid silver. "You can fix machines, Eli, but not destiny," she said softly. "They built me to serve power, but you taught me what it means to protect love." The ships landed, heavy boots echoed outside. Soldiers surrounded the outpost, loudspeakers roared. "Surrender the construct designated Leora 7. Or be terminated," Eli's heart pounded. "Construct, listen to them, they still see you as property." "But I don't," he said fiercely. "I see you." Leora's glow grew brighter, her voice trembling. "If I stay, they'll kill you. If I go, maybe they'll stop." He shook his head. "Desperate, you think they'll ever stop? You're not their creation anymore, you're mine. Leora, you're ours." She took a slow breath, her hands glowing like sunrise. "You gave me a name," she whispered. "You gave me heart." The soldiers fired again, explosions tore through the sand. The outpost began to crumble. Leora stepped outside, her bare feet sinking into the dust, energy pulsing through the ground like ripples of light. Eli shouted after her, "Leora!" She turned once, her hair flowing like silver fire. "Stay inside," she said softly, "and remember me not as what I was made to be, but who you made me." Then she raised her hands, and the world answered. The sky lit up. Machines from the wrecks rose again, pulled by her will, glowing blue and gold. Forming a spiral above her head, the soldiers opened fire, but every bullet melted in the air, every drone fried in seconds, and then silence, pure and sharp. The ships in the sky shuddered, their systems crashing, their engines freezing. A shockwave of light burst outward, reaching the horizon, wiping clean everything mechanical, everything cruel, but leaving the world itself untouched. Eli covered his eyes from the light, shouting her name, "Leora." When the brightness faded, the ships were gone. No wreckage, no fire, only wind and quiet sand. He ran outside, heart racing, looking everywhere. And then he saw her standing in the middle of the desert, her glow fading like the last breath of a star. He ran to her, catching her as she fell, her voice a faint whisper. "It's done." He shook his head, tears burning his eyes. "No, no, you stay with me." Her smile was soft, peaceful. "I am with you," she said weakly, placing her hand on his chest. "Here." The light in her skin dimmed slowly, until it vanished completely. The air was still. Eli sat there, holding her, the wind blowing around them, the desert stretching forever. He didn't know how long he stayed like that. Minutes or hours, maybe forever, but then something strange happened. The machines around the canyon began to hum softly, the same way they had when she first arrived. The same sound of life returning. He looked up. The broken drone she had fixed earlier lifted into the air, its eyes glowing silver, and through it came her voice, gentle, warm, alive. "Eli, don't stop fixing things," she said. "Every broken thing deserves a second chance. Even the universe." He laughed through his tears, looking up at the endless sky. "I won't stop, I promise," he whispered. The stars above shimmered brighter, almost as if they heard her name. And somewhere beyond those stars, something new was born. The legend of the starborn girl who loved a human mechanic more than her own life. And in Rusttown, people would one day tell stories of how a man who fixed old machines fell in love with the heart of one, and together they changed the sky forever.